So in the last lecture, we had our data prep that we got from the user to send off to the server. So in this lecture, I want to start making our method, our API method to send off to the server. Okay, so over here, what I want to do first is I want to set loading back to false. And what I'm talking about is in the last video, we were testing out our loading icon just to make sure that it displayed as the process is going, as we're making an HTTP request. Well, obviously that worked, so we can set that back to false over here because we set it to true for testing. Let's set it back to false. We're going to save, and that should disappear. Okay, so mark that off. All right, next we're gonna prep that. We're gonna prep the data, the user data for our HTTP request. Okay, so right now let's go back to our sign up, our sign up component, and as you can see here, we have form data, which is an object with all these properties here. However, when we make our HTTP requests, we don't need all these properties. The only thing we need are these three here: username, email, password. So what I'm gonna do to select those, I'm gonna go to the handle submit, because this is the method that's gonna fire off when we start when the user press submit. So we're gonna go here to the else block, which is at this point, if we reach this point, that means everything went well as far as client-side validation. So I am going to delete this here and delete this. And the first thing I want to do is I want to destructure the form data and pull out exactly what I need. So from the form data, I need, it was the username, email, and password. Okay, now let's store that object into a variable called data. Copy this and paste it right here. So now this object is stored in a variable called data. Okay, all right, so let's go back here, prep data object for HTTP request. Okay, so we prepped it already. And so now it's stored in a variable called data. Next thing we want to do is set loading to true. Okay, so at this point, we are getting ready to fire off our HTTP request. And we want to do is change this loading property here from false to true. Because the moment we change this value to true, that icon that we were using last video will appear while the process of is being made in the background to the server. So we are going to use our method set form data to set that, to change that property, set form data, and spread out whatever the current form data is. And we are going to change loading to true. Okay, so we can test that out right now before we continue, just to make sure everything's going well. So here, another thing I want to do, because instead of having to do this repeatedly, like me having to fill in this constantly so we can test it out, I am going to do something here, and I'm going to fill in our state data manually, but we will remove it once everything's set. I will be doing, so I'm going to, here for username, I'm going to do John Doe, email johndoe@gmail.com, password 123, ABC 123, ABC 123. Okay, and that's it. So if I save that, these fields are filled in. So now I can just, it just makes it's going to make it a lot easier for me because this is just for testing. All right, so let's go back to where I was talking about before. So we are here, right? So what I want to test at this moment is to check that this loading is value does change it true. And if it works, because it's being changed to true, we should see our loading icon, right? So let's test it out. So if I press submit, it shows. All right, so that's good. All right, so all I have to do is refresh the page, and then it's gonna disappear. Okay, so we see that works. Okay, so we set the loading to true. All right, next thing is we want to install and import Axios. Axios is a library for making client-side HTTP requests. Okay, it is promise-based, or it uses promises. So we can use then and catch, which makes things much more better. And so let's take care of that. Yeah, I'm going to open another terminal window. And make sure you're in the client directory, okay? And within here, we're going to do import. No, not import, I'm sorry. npm install Axios. All right, and like always, I like to pull out I'm going to pull out the package.json from the client side here and pay attention to my dependencies object and ensure that the Axios does appear there. Okay, so let's give this a little bit of time. And while that's loading, I'm going to check out our Axios documentation. Okay. And we are going to be making a post request with Axios. So let's check out what are the arguments that we need to pass for our post request. Okay, so request methods. Okay, we are making a post request because we are posting data to the server. This thing requires a URL, which is the API or the server-side endpoint that we're trying to hit. And then the data, in this case, we had prepped the user data, right, in the variable called data, and then a config file, okay? And that's with options that we can set to configure for our headers and other options, okay? So that's what we'll be using. So let's go back here. Okay, so Axios installed. Okay, let's exit that screen. Okay, so Axios is installed. Good. All right. Now we will be importing that, but before that, we are going to. I'm going to put here within we are currently on our sign up component. I'm going to call out a method called signup. This method has not been created yet, but we will. And it is the argument is going to receive, it's expecting is the data. And that's this right here. This is what we're passing as an argument to our method. Okay. So let's create that. And within our source folder, I want to create a folder called API. API is going to be used to hold all our API requests. So here I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it API. And within our API folder, I'm going to create a file called auth.js. Okay, so these are going to be this file is for all our API requests related to auth, like our sign up component, our sign in component. Okay. So here inside our auth file, we first have, because I'm going to be using Axios, so I'm going to have to import that. I'm going to import that here, import Axios from Axios. Okay. And my first function that I want to use is, we're going to export it, export const, and it's going to be called signup. Right. And we are expecting, it will be, this is going to be asynchronous. Okay, it's synchronous function, and we are expecting the data as an argument. Remember, data is coming from the signup component when we call it over here, right? Okay, so we're passing that data object, and we are going to start setting up our configuration file. Config. This is going to be an object, and we're going to use the properties header, and this is an object, and we're going to set content type of application /JSON. Okay, so we're telling the server the data that it should be expecting to receive. We are sending JSON data. Okay, so we have our config file, our config object, and we already have our data. So we're ready to make our Axios request. We're going to do const, and inside a variable called response, we're going to do await Axios and post. We're making a post request, and then the URL or the endpoint in the backend, which we're planning on hitting API auth and sign up. We have not set this endpoint up on our end on the back end, but just know that I am preparing in later on to create it, and this is the endpoint we're going to use as our endpoint to make our post request to receive the user's data. Okay, and the next argument is the data, and then our config. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to return our response. Okay, we want to return this response. Now this response, this right here, is the server is going to bring back either a success or error. Okay, and it's going to be stored in this response. So once we do that, we want to return this response, whatever's in here, to whatever called it, which we called it over here, our sign up. I made a mistake here. I put capital S, it's lowercase s, right in here. At which point, remember, Axios is promise based. It uses the promise API. So that means we can use the then and the catch, which is what we're going to do here. And we're going to do then, and then we're getting back the response. And a catch if we catch any errors. Okay. In here, I want to do, what did I do? Oh, I got to do dot. I'm sorry, dot. There we go. I want to console log if we get an error. I'm going to do here. I'm going to do Axios sign up error, and then we'll pass the error. Okay, to help us debug if we do get an error. And here, if everything goes well, we're gonna console log the response. Okay, so now we have set up our sign up, our API sign up method. And let's mark some of these things off. I installed and imported Axios. Our API sign up, right? We created our API sign up method, right? And we passed along the data right in here. Mark that off. And we return the response. In the sign up method, we return the response. So that way it can return back to here, which is where it was first called. Okay, so mark that off. And and then even this point here, Axios user promise API, as I mentioned. So sign up then catch. So that's what I was saying, is that because Axios is promise based, right? When we return the response, we can use that over here, which is what I did here, the then and then the catch. So if everything goes well, this block of code will run. If not, this block of code will run, and we could check out the error because we console logged it over here with the error object. Okay, so let's mark that off. And finally, set form fields empty, success message with response, and loading a false. Okay, so back here. Oh yeah. Oh, one thing I didn't do, which I forgot. I don't even know why I marked this as true. So load. Wait, did I mark it true? Oh, I did. I'm sorry. Where am I? Okay. Yes, we did mark it true. Okay, for some reason I thought I missed it, and I was wondering why I even marked it off. But yes, I did set loading to true, and we even tested it out, right? We saw that the loading icon that it showed. So we set it to true here, and at this point here, right, the sign up, we get the if everything goes well, we're gonna console log everything, and then I want to set the loading, or yes, set form data, and we are going to let's do this step by step. So set form fields to empty. Okay, so all the fields here, all these fields here, we are gonna set back to empty. Let's go back here. And so there was username, set it to empty, email, empty, password, empty, and a password to empty. And we also want to set loading to false, right? Because over here it fired off before we made the HTTP request, and if I don't set this to false, that icon is gonna run infinitively, right? Is that even a word? It's gonna run forever. Okay, so we have to set this loading to false. Okay, so we set that to false, and then the other thing we want to do is a little bit here. Okay, we want to set a success message. Okay. Because again, remember that if it reaches this block right here, that means everything succeeded from our HTTP request. So we want to set our success message to response. Remember, right here. Remember, we received back our response from here, right? We're returning it, and what do we get from our response? If we look here at our Axios documentation, let's take a look. Okay, so here's our response. The response for request contains the following information. So we get a data object, and this data is the most often used, that's where the response from the server is going to store everything. Everything that's coming from the server is going to store it in this object here. And we can use this property here to do some checking for the response. If everything went well, we can do some conditional checks. This is also one right here. See if everything's went well. And then you got some others here. All right, so again, the response, I have to do response.data. And then search for whatever property I'm anticipating to get back from the server. So that's what I'm going to do here. So back to the sign up. So for our success message, I'm doing response.data, remember the data object, and then here from the server side, I am planning for a success message. I'm planning on sending back a success message property, which is going to be my own custom property that I'm creating. Okay, and I'm going to name it success. No, yeah, success message. Success, yeah, success message, spelled like this. Okay. Okay, so notice that this one's different from our component, right? This one, when we did success message, is MSG, right? This one, I'm just spelling that out completely. Is success and then message spelled out. So this is the success message that's coming from our server end that I'm going to be creating. I have not created again, I have not created this property, but I already know that this is the property that I will be sending as a response if everything goes well on the server side. So that's why I'm already adding it here, at which point it will be stored in our component state property success message. Okay. I hope that made sense. Okay, so that should be it right now. So and oh, before I forget, also here inside our catch, I mean, if we get to this catch block, that means we got an error. So we do want to console log, get us console log in our console, but also we want to set loading to false here because I'm sorry, set form data. I want to set my loading back to false here too. Otherwise, it's also gonna just run forever. So here I'm gonna spread out the form, the current form data, and then loading to false again. Okay. Okay, but I am not going to empty out the fields here because if we're getting an error, then you know I could, yeah, there's no reason to empty it out. Okay. So let's see, signup is not defined. Okay, we're getting this message because we have not imported it yet. We have it created here in our auth, but we need to import it. So here, I'm going to import from, let's see, currently in the components. So we need to go back one directory into the API folder and then auth. And we are pulling out the name of the method, where we called it sign up. Okay, so we imported it now with our sign up component so we can use it. All right, so let's see. All right, okay, let me make sure I have everything worked out here. Okay, okay, so let's give this a try. So at this point, we are going to either hit this block of code or this block of code. Okay. But let me write a message, a console log message here for our success here. It's going to be Axios sign up success. So we can check it out in the console. Okay. Let me save that and let's test this out. Let me close this up here. All right, so our fields are already filled because remember I set it for testing purposes for now. And if I press sign up, we get an error saying we get a status code 44, right? And we're hitting this API/auth/sign up, but it's saying not found, right? And that's because we have not set up our endpoint, right? But that's okay. So it reached this point here, right? Because we see the Axios sign up error right here, Axios sign up error, and it's telling us error request failed with status code 400. Okay, and again, that's expected because we have not yet set up an API endpoint, so it automatically goes over here. Okay, but this is exactly what we wanted, and so that's it. That's all we needed right now. So let's mark that off, and